Hey YouTube cosplayers! I'm here to answer some of your RIT dye questions. So since my last RIT dye video, I've gotten a ton of questions about dyeing my wigs with RIT Synthetic dye. And I am happy to answer those questions every single time, but I thought it would be more convenient for you guys if I put those questions and some information in a video so that you could watch it. Now, if you only have a couple of questions and you want to sit through the whole video, I will put in the description box what the questions are and the timestamp so that you can click on it and go directly to that question so you can get the answer to your questions. But I'm going to try to make this as interesting as I can for you, and if you watch the whole video and then you go and watch my other RIT dye videos, then you'll have a lot more context to work with if you know the answers to the questions in this video. First, let's go back to the fern of the last video that I did so that we can talk about some disclaimers. I have a couple disclaimers. I do not work for RIT dye. I am not sponsored to or paid to do these videos. I'm a cosplayer. We love finding new ways to do things to improve our cosplays. I have another disclaimer for you. I am a cosplayer, I am an artist, and I'm a bit quirky. What I am not, however, is a hair dyeing professional. I am also not a professional or expert on RIT dye. There's a science to wig making, there is a science to the whole dyeing process, I'm sure, but I'm not a scientist, although I do play one at conventions. Either way, science is real and all that jazz. The first question is, what exactly is RIT dye? RIT dye is a commercial dye that's used for household purposes such as dyeing clothing. That's what it's most commonly known for, among other things, of course. If you go to their Instagram page, you can see a lot of the creative ways that they use RIT dye. RIT dye comes in liquid and powdered form and in their all-purpose and dye more synthetic blends. The method for dyeing with RIT dye is to soak the clothing or material or whatever you have in hot water with the RIT dye added and agitate it by stirring it a little bit for the amount of time stated on the back of the bottle or on their website so that you can get the color deposit that you're looking for. You can find complete instructions for anything you want to dye on their website. RIT dye is non-toxic and cruelty-free, and what that means is that their products are safe for your body and for the environment, and that they don't test any of their products on animals. Their website says that they're vegan. This is really important to me because I don't use any products that test on animals for my cosplay or in real life. So you can be assured that their products are completely safe for your babies, furry or otherwise. The all-purpose dye can be found in 37 liquid shades and 19 powdered shades, but you can mix and match those colors to form a gajillion different shade variations. Oh yeah, gajillion. Yeah, it's a word. It says here that you can dye natural fabrics like cotton, wool, and silk, as well as synthetics like nylon and rayon using the all-purpose dye. The synthetic dye is used specifically for fabrics that are polyester, acrylic, acetate, and blends that contain these fibers. The synthetic dye comes only in liquid form, and you can get 14 shades. It's the same with the all-purpose dye though. You can mix and match the colors that exist in the synthetic blend so that you can get different shade variations. Not necessarily a gajillion, but pretty close. Where can you find Dye More Synthetic RIT dye? And I speak mostly of the synthetic dye because that's what I use for my cosplay wigs, and so that's what I'll probably refer to the most. But usually when you go to your local craft store, you can find the RIT dye all-purpose and the synthetic blend both in the same place. You can find liquid version, the powdered version, and most stores will have most of the colors, if not all of them. You can find them in Michael's and Joann's. If you still shop at Hobby Lobby, which I don't, you can find them there. And you can probably also find them in Walmart and Target, but I really haven't been to the stores in almost a year, so I wouldn't know about Walmart or Target. I live in the southern US. My husband's laughing at me. I live in the southern US, and so the choices for locations or where you can find things may be different than your part of the world. But for those of us who are still trying our best to social distance, you can always order off of the RIT website. They have a store, or you can go to Amazon and find most of their colors online. Why do we even dye our wigs? Well, If you are a cosplayer and you watch a lot of anime and read comic books, then you know that the characters that we love and want to cosplay, their hair comes in so many different shades and color variations. And a lot of those don't exist in the wig world. Now, there are cosplay wig stores now that will sell a wider variety of the shades that you're looking for. You can visit epiccosplaywigs.com and artawigs.com. I'll list some more that I find down in the description box so that you can go directly there and kind of look at their color variations and their choices. But if you happen to be low on time or low on cash, you may want to look at alternatives such as RIT Dye. In my case, I was very low on time. I ordered a wig and it wasn't the color that I needed, and so I needed a quick fix because convention was right around the corner. So why do we only use synthetic RIT dye on our wigs? Most cosplay wigs that you will buy are going to be synthetic wigs. That means that they're not human hair wigs. Synthetic wigs are made to look like natural hair, but for most of us, we appreciate the fact that we can purchase synthetic wigs and right out the box we can wear them exactly as they look. Take this wig for example. Right out the box, the wig is curled. It's a kinky curl, and so you're not really going to get this outside of just purchasing the wig outright, but it's synthetic, and so this style is always going to stay in place and it's always going to look like this. Manufacturers of synthetic wigs may use single type monofilament fibers or a combination of 2 or 3 polyfilament fibers. Yeah, whatever. For the lay people like us, we just need to know that the material is man-made. And so because it's a man-made material and not natural like cotton or linen, we use a dye that's for man-made materials. Polyester, acrylic, nylon. Those are 3 of the man-made materials that you can find in synthetic hair. Sometimes it's made up of only one, like polyester, but most times it's a blend of all 3. This means that the all-purpose dye is going to be less likely to work because it won't be able to grab onto the fibers that are in synthetic wigs or synthetic material. That's why they suggest on their website that you use the synthetic dye so that it's going to be a stronger mix or a stronger blend so that it can actually turn the material color. So think about it this way. Your synthetic wigs are more like fabric than they are actual hair. That's why the RIT website, I can't say that. Say that 3 times fast. RIT website, RIT website, RIT.
That's part of the website?
He can't do it either. Okay, focus, sorry, focus. That's why the RIT website tells you to, no it doesn't. I don't even remember what I was gonna say now, but it's fine, we'll move on. And some of you may ask about wigs that come blended with human hair and synthetic hair. If you're wearing cosplay wigs, you don't really have to worry about this because most of those are going to be synthetic. However, if you're not wearing cosplay wigs and you are wearing a wig that is a blend of both, then it's going to most likely be classified as a synthetic wig. If you mix something real with something fake, more than likely it's going to be more fake than real. So can colored synthetic wigs be dyed? And by that question, I mean, can this wig that I'm wearing that is already a color be dyed? The answer is yes. On the website they call it over dyeing, and a lot of people want to change the colors of materials or fabrics that they already have. And so you can do that using the website's guide for how to mix and match colors. A black synthetic wig cannot be lightened. That's just all there is to it. There is no way that you can put a black synthetic wig in any water with red or purple or blue RIT synthetic dye, and there's not even a possibility that that wig is going to turn red or blue or purple. Now, of course, if we're touching a little bit on semantics and you've got a blue black wig that you want jet black, or you've got a dark gray wig that you want jet black, then yes, you will be able to dye it darker, but you cannot lighten a dark wig. A lighter shade can definitely be darkened, however. This wig that I'm wearing was a wig for my Raven cosplay, and it came to me as a bright pink color. I just poured some of this purple synthetic RIT dye into a pot with hot water and dipped the wig in there and let it sit, stirred it, agitated it, and when it came out it was this color. Up close you can see that there are different shades in there because the wig had different shades of pinks, but for the most part it's purple and I'm in love with it. That would not have worked if the wig was purple and I wanted to make it a brighter or a lighter pink. I just wouldn't have been able to lift the color. Your best bet when trying to dye a wig and trying to reach a certain color is to buy a blonde or platinum wig. A blonde or platinum synthetic wig is going to be like a canvas for you. You're going to be able to mix and match whatever shades you want, and when that hair comes out of the water, it's going to be the shade that you pretty much imagined. I will say that changing a wig color, it takes a little bit of knowledge of the color wheel. So for example, if you have a light blue wig and you want to make it green, you can't necessarily put green synthetic dye into a pot, put the light blue wig in there, and have it come out a nice poison ivy green color, for example, because blue mixed with green is going to be like a teal or a cyan color. And so what happens is if you've got a wig that's already a color, like say a light orange, and you want that color to be a dark red, then you're gonna need to know what mixed with light orange makes dark red. And so it's really easy to know that if you have memorized the color wheel, but the RIT website makes it a lot easier for you to look up the color that you need and then find the color combinations. So if your wig is a color, then it will tell you what dye color you need, and you mix those two colors together to get the result that you want. You may not get it the first time. Sometimes you get a lighter color than what you want the first time. That means you just need to let it sit in there a little longer, or try a little more or a little less of the RIT dye. Why do you have to wash your wig before dyeing it? It's kind of just great practice to wash your wigs anyway. When you receive a wig in the mail or you purchase them from a wig shop, you should always come home and put them in soapy water and wash them before putting them on your scalp. Honestly, you don't know where those wigs have been, where they've been stored, where they came from, and so you don't necessarily want to put something that you don't know who's touched it and things like that on your scalp. It's just, I don't know, it makes me feel queasy, and so I wash all of my wigs. But for the purposes of dyeing, when you receive a wig, a lot of times the wig is going to be coated in something to either protect it or to keep it that color or to keep it that style. It will not ruin a wig if you wash it. Wigs always come with washing directions that you should follow, and if you follow those directions, then your wig should turn out perfectly. Washing the hair is going to ensure that you get rid of any finishes on top of the hair that could interfere with the absorption of the dye. It's really like sanding a smooth object before priming and painting it. What about the water temperature? What water temperature should you use? According to the RIT website, they say that RIT loves hot water because it loosens the fibers in the fabric so that it can accept the dye. They recommend using the hottest water safe for your fabric. So for dyeing natural fabrics such as cotton, linen, silk, or wool, use RIT all-purpose dye at 140 degrees to 160 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 60 to 71 degrees Celsius. If tap water isn't hot enough, heat water on the stove and then add it to the dye bath. If you've watched my other videos, then you see that I use this little temperature goober thingy to make sure that the temperature stays exactly where it needs to. For dyeing synthetic materials such as polyester, acrylic, or acetate, use RIT Dye More for synthetics at 180 to 220 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's 82 degrees to 104 degrees Celsius. To do this, you'll need to dye on your stove top because you're not going to get tap water that hot. How do I know how much RIT to use? So the RIT website gives this really great explanation of how you would weigh the fabric or the material that you're dyeing and how much you know to use. But basically 4 ounces of liquid dye will color 1 pound of fabric, and that's about 3 yards. Most wigs are not going to be 3 yards worth of material, and so you really just kind of have to experiment and play with the color a little bit. This bottle is 7 ounces. If I were going to give advice, I would say that for a wig, basically I think 1/3 of this bottle worked for this wig. Maybe a little closer to 1/2 of the bottle, but I still have about a little less than half a bottle left, so I would say a good 1/3. It really also depends on how rich you want the color to turn out, and it also depends on how dark the original color of the wig is. If you're trying to dye a darker brown wig, maybe black, well, black is not going to need as much dye as you think, but you know, just kind of experiment with it and stir it around, and you can dip the hair or a piece of hair in there and lift it out just just to kind of get a glimpse of how the color may deposit. The longer you leave it in, more than likely the deeper the color will be. But definitely go onto the RIT website and they're going to tell you exactly the measurements and the weights that you need in order to apply the dye to the material. Can you use RIT dye in your pots and your cooking utensils? And I've gotten this question a lot, and I have to say that although RIT is vegan and non-toxic and it is safe for your body and the environment, it is not a food grade product. And so the website says that they do not recommend using it with anything that you have to eat off of. I have given kind of the opposite advice because I feel completely safe using it in my noodle pot. That's what I call it. If they say on the website you do use one of your pots or your bowls, then you can always use cleaner to scrub it out. A detergent or a soap. You can use hot water and vinegar as well. That's what I do. I soak it with some soapy water and then I wash it out, and then I pour some warm water and vinegar into the pot, and then I feel good about using it later. If you are feeling unsure, however, then you can always go to the dollar store or order a disposable bowl or a plastic bowl that you designate only for coloring your fabrics or using for your cosplay purposes. What about your spoons? Well, I have a spoon that is a very, very old white plastic spoon, and I just use that because I don't use it for anything else. It was already dyed and colored, and the color was changing a little bit, and so I figured it was fine. But again, using a disposable plastic spoon or knife or fork is fine. Just make sure that it doesn't melt with the temperature of the water. Does the dye stain? Why, yes, it stains the wig. Sorry, I had to. Okay, but seriously, I've never had my skin like around my neck when wearing this wig, or my clothing or my hands dyed when I touch the wig after dyeing it, washing it, and drying it. I've worn it several times. I've been out in rain with it. I've sweat underneath it because it is flipping hot, but I've never had any stains anywhere on my body from the dye. I've also never had any color come out on my heating products. There's been, I think, one time that I used a flat iron to just kind of flatten the bottom of this out a little bit after I dyed it, and I didn't get any color deposit on the flat iron. It helps to wash it as thoroughly as possible after dyeing it, as the instructions will tell you. Also, wear gloves because you could get stains on your fingers. The first time I used it, I don't think I wore gloves because, you know, I just went rogue with it all. And I was able to wash it off with soap and water and then in the shower later on. But if you really don't want it on your skin, that's completely understandable. Then just get yourself some rubber gloves and you should be fine. If you accidentally get the dye on your skin and you find it hard to come off the first time, then the RIT Dye website suggests using detergent or a stronger cleaner, household cleaner, to kind of get it off. I always say to be careful with household cleaners, especially if you're using harsher products for your skin. Just if you do use it, rinse it right off with warm water and just try to get all of it off so it doesn't affect your skin. Also, if you wear gloves, please make sure that you don't have latex allergies, or try to find gloves that don't have latex in them. Please, please, please take time to go to the RIT website and explore their pages. They have curated so much information for you guys, and they've put it together so well. The pictures are beautiful, the website's beautiful, and I think that you will find all the answers you need on that website. Remember, if you're dyeing a synthetic wig, you will go on the website and they talk about fabric and material. Your synthetic wig is fabric. So if you treat it like fabric, then you should be just fine. When I dyed my wig, I followed the directions exactly as they were written after reading them 15,000 times because I wanted to be sure that my poor little raven wig wouldn't be ruined. My results turned out exactly as I wanted them to turn out, which was lucky for me, but reading the directions really does help. So another disclaimer, as I explained in my previous video, is that for me, RIT dye and using RIT dye on this wig was a fantastic adventure, and it was a lot of fun. It was scary because I didn't know how it would turn out, and it turned out exactly as I pictured it. I love this wig. I've worn it to work. I've worn it out when we go to the comic book store. It's not just for my Raven cosplay. And so if I had the choice, however, I would have purchased a wig in the color that I wanted it to begin with. And that's what I tried to do. And I think that's easier either way. If you, however, cannot find the color that you need, and if you kind of, you know, have something happen similar to my situation where you get the wrong colored wig, then you always have RIT dye to fall back on. So yeah, I hope that video was very informative for you, and I hope that it helps answer some of the questions that you have. If you came here from the dyeing curly hair video or whatever it's called, then I'm gonna put a link so that you can get right back to that video and continue watching so that you can see how RIT dye treats a curly synthetic wig and if the curl texture is at all altered when you do use RIT dye in hot water. So hopefully you enjoyed that video, and you are probably going to be as surprised by the results that I was. So yeah, that's all I have for you, and thanks again for watching. I will be back next week with a Scarlet Witch video for you, so look forward to that. Have a good weekend, happy cosplaying, take care of yourselves, bye!